Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful Saturday. Today we're talking about why you should house your baby crested geckos in a lidless rack system. So what you're seeing in front of you is the lidless rack system that I use to house all of my baby crested geckos, and I actually purchased these racks about a year ago, and I wanted to make an update video on them to see how they've been going over the past year, if I've had any issues, and to see if some of the concerns that I had when I initially purchased them came true or not, and just to talk about how lidless rack systems have made an improvement on my crested gecko keeping and breeding. So just a quick recap of my original video if you didn't see that. I purchased these racks about a year ago from Sea Serpents. You can find them online. They have a variety of different rack systems, but the ones that I have here hold 45 babies, and I'm using these for crested geckos. So the initial purchase was very easy. I think they took about 8 or 10 weeks to arrive. They just came on a flatbed truck right to my house. The delivery driver had a pallet jack, jacked them up, dropped them off right behind my house, and all I had to do was open them up and bring them inside. And they're actually not that heavy at all, so maybe just 2 people and you can easily get these into your house. If you're on a first floor or a floor that doesn't have stairs, you could probably do it by yourself. Mine came with wheels, and I believe that maybe costed a little bit extra, but don't quote me on that. And the total price of these was $1,800, and that's including the shipping. The racks themselves are $700 a piece, and then shipping to my location was $400, which sounds like a lot, but I think it was a pretty good deal, to be honest. For the price, you're getting the rack, you're getting all the empty tubs, and then I got mine equipped with heat tape, just kind of as a security measure in case I didn't like the racks and I could sell them. I figured all other reptiles would probably need heat tape with them. Now, the thing that I liked about these is that they're lidless, of course. You don't have to worry about lids, which is how I previously kept most of my geckos, large and small. I had them on racks with lids, and specifically these babies, I kept them on a rack system where I had to stack the containers one on top of each other. So if I wanted to get to the gecko that was on the bottom, I would have to unstack all the ones that were on top of it, open it up, and then put all the other ones back on top of it. So it was really annoying. And this has been a huge improvement for me in keeping of my babies, not only because it makes it a lot easier, it also looks better, and I can also keep more geckos in the same space without sacrificing the size of their container. So in the space that these two are in, I can have some juveniles and I can have 90 baby crested geckos. Compared to before, I had a rack that I had made and I was using tubs with lids, same size, 6-quart tubs, and I think I could only house 65 max. And so this is a big improvement, almost 50% more in the same space with not sacrificing cage space, which is important to me. And so these have been a huge improvement on my life. But like I said, these were $1,800. They arrived, they looked great. And I did have a couple initial concerns with them when they arrived. One of my main concerns was that the back is only screwed in on the edges and not in the center. And the back is also not a full sheet of PVC like the sides and shelves are. So I was kind of worried about it warping over time after me sliding in and out, hundreds of times with the little cages and then bumping into the back, whether or not that would warp out or not. And as of right now, which is about a year later, I have not had this issue. However, we're going to talk a little bit about some other warping I may be experiencing, but that was one thing that I was worried about that hasn't came true yet. My biggest complaint about this rack system overall is the fact that some of the shelves are not properly spaced. So for example, the top shelf there, you can see I have some cups wedged in the center, and that is because the center tub was completely closed off from the top. One of the things that they advertise about these racks is that there's a little space so you don't have to have ventilation. Obviously, I would always still recommend having ventilation, so that's something you should keep in mind. And just as a quick side note, you can see that I poked holes in mine. You may notice some have 2 rows of holes in the front and some have 3. What I realized over this summer is that the ones that only had 2 weren't getting enough, and when it was humid here in Wisconsin, they were starting to get a little moldy. And so what I did is I went back and I poked another row all the way around, and that really seemed to help things up because it was like 50% more ventilation. And that's one nice thing about using holes. Obviously, if you want to use vents, that would still work too. But I do have very dry winters here in Wisconsin, so I think the holes was the way to go for me. But with that being said, one thing that they advertise is that there's a gap at the top of each enclosure to help with ventilation, but still not big enough to let the animals out. Well, on some of the shelves, there is 1/16 of ventilation, which is the most common. The majority of them have 1/16 inch of distance between the tub and the top, which is great. But on the top and on the bottom shelf, there is no ventilation at all. They're snug, and they're actually almost tight where you have to pretty much like grip them to get them out of there. And then the other thing is that on one of the shelves closer to the bottom, there's actually 2/16 inch, and it's starting to look like it's getting a little bit bigger. So I think that shelf is warping a little bit, and hopefully it doesn't get to the point where it's going to become not usable for the baby crested geckos that I have. I think 2/16 inch, it looks bad, but it's still, nothing crazy. I don't think the baby geckos could get out of there, but just something to keep in mind. And this could have been when I bought the rack and I didn't notice it, but now it's something that I've been noticing more, is that it was getting a little bit bigger over time. Another thing that I mentioned in that initial video of me getting those is these juvenile tubs in the middle here, and I think it's important that we talk about these as well. You'll notice that none of these have geckos in them anymore. And while I think these are good, and I think these can work for particular situations, particularly if you're a smaller keeper and you're looking for just a nicer looking tub, I think these can definitely work for you. However, for my scenario, I don't think these are the best option to go for. And next video, we're going to be taking a look at how I house juveniles now, and they're not in these tubs. And that's because I ran into one main issue with these. You can see how I have them stacked here. These are just a magnetic tub off of Amazon. They're used for shoes. And while I do like them and they're nice little storage boxes, which is what I'm using them for now, there is one issue, and that is that the bottom has a ton of grooves in it and lots of little nooks and crannies. And so what was happening is I was putting my paper towel down on here, and then the geckos would poop, or crickets or whatever would get lodged down in there, and it just made it a nightmare to clean. It's so difficult. So then what I decided to do is I bought some sign material on Amazon. It's basically just hard plastic. I made a template and I cut these out to put in the bottoms. And while it works at keeping most of the stuff out, you're still getting some crickets down there, some poop down there, and just other nasty stuff, and it still makes it super hard to clean. So that's why I stopped using these for juveniles, and just because I have such a better option now that we're going to talk about in my next video. But these are okay, I think, if you're a small keeper, because what you can also do is, and what a lot of people do, is they'll turn them on their side so that they're taller up and down, and then you don't have as many nooks and crannies, and you can kind of use them like a smaller, clear Exoterra in a way. And they can kind of stack together sideways, which is nice. But just for my scenario where I have a lot of geckos and I want cleaning to be easy, I don't really recommend these. They're okay, but they're not the greatest, and I have something a lot better. So I don't use these anymore. They're still all right, but it's up to you whether or not you should use them. But with all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. Next time, we're going to be taking a look at how I house juveniles and subadults in a lidless rack system as well. But thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next one.